Halo 4 was a big change in the Halo franchise, not only in ownership going from, or the creation of the franchise going from Bungie to 343 after Bungie left Microsoft, but also in the story, the combat, and the feel of the whole franchise following Bungie's absence. Now, Halo 4 is what we're going to be looking at today, and how did it change Halo, and was it really that bad? So, after replaying through this game, after I replayed through all the Halo games, I came to realize that Halo 4 was not as bad as I remember it being. I remember a lot of hate for this game being mostly in the changes that it made to the franchise, such as the difficulty modes were less about making the game more difficult or even making the AI slightly more advanced the higher the difficulty, but more about spawning more and more enemies to make it more difficult for the player. Obviously, this was a big annoyance for people who loved the more challenging difficulties, as instead of shifting the damage that you do, shifting the difficulty of the AI, the advancement of the AI, and just the overall, actual difficulty of the game, instead they just kept everything the same and increased the enemy count to the point where it was near impossible in some situations, because this leads to another issue. There was a lot of linearity with this game in terms of its level design and its options in combat. So when looking at the combat is very similar to past Halo. I mean, besides there's differences in sound effects and stuff, which were a bit annoying to me personally because I really like some of the old sound effects. But there's not enough options when going into combat, such as before, where you could throw things. The grenades were a lot more common. You could pick up a variety of different guns, even though the guns have been changed in this to both my liking and to my disliking. Some of the guns were very weird to me and just were worse versions of past guns in the other games and weren't really a big of a change in anything besides the design of the weapon. And this just led to the gameplay getting very repetitive, as well as the level design getting very repetitive, even though there was a big shift in art style, like Master Chief looks different, and the game itself just has a different feeling, both at the time there was an update in graphics from the last generation to this generation that Halo 4 took place in, and from the time period and the place that this game takes place in within the Halo universe. And this just led to repetitiveness, and some of the levels were extremely long, not only because there was so many enemies spawned at some times, especially on even on normal difficulty, that it became difficult to, or just more like tedious, not even difficult at some points, to get through the levels, as well as the levels were just long in general, and it became very repetitive and unoriginal, I felt, unlike other Halos where every level felt like a new expedition and felt very concise and like there was more options. Even in the first game, like Combat Evolved, where there was a lot of variety in terms of level layout, and there would be enemies fighting each other on a different plane, enemies fighting each other below, above. You can't get to them until later in the level, and then you come back and it looks different. When there was bombs blowing up, missiles getting fired, and the landscape was changing as you went through it. And the story is actually decent. It makes you feel like Sheaf is in love with Cortana, which, I mean, Sheaf obviously appreciates Cortana and has a strong friendship with her, that's what I felt in the past Halo games, because they've been through so much together. But in the end, they attempted to make it feel like Sheaf was like in love with her, and then spoiler alert, when she finally sacrifices herself, it doesn't feel that impactful, and it feels almost useless. And in the end, the game feels very open-ended, and they went into the next game following the same story and changed it a little bit, and then the game just... And this is also a trend you'll see in a lot of the future games by 343, where they'll have a lot of enemies spawned at once to try and make it more difficult, very repetitive layout, and even in Halo Infinite, a lot of the levels were very similar to each other, especially in the Forerunner areas, especially in this game or in Halo Infinite, where the Forerunner levels are very similar to each other, and you can even see exact same areas from the second level of Halo Infinite to the last. But that's a discussion for another time. So, was Halo 4 that bad? In my opinion, yes and no, but just let me know what you think of it in the comments, and bye-bye.